And greetings. Happy Friday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I'm Steve Deace with Todd and Aaron McIntyre. We're going to be joined by our colleague, Jill Savage, here in a moment. And yesterday, of course, if you guys watched the overtime, one of the questions from my brilliant and beloved daughter, Anastasia, was when is it too early to play Christmas music? Because she's already playing it on October 2nd. And then yesterday I went to Costco and they had this ginormously obnoxious and beautiful Christmas decoration already out. Took a picture in front of it. I loved it so much. And you know, that inspired me. And so I had to bust out the Clark Griswold Christmas shirt here on October 4th. I had to do it, man. I'm ready. Todders, and your thoughts.
Is it possible to do gluttony ironically, or is it just gluttony? Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas, one and all, indeed, as I try to reconnect with Steve because I screwed up, and he's back.
As long as he heard that, I don't care.
Yeah. You'll have to repeat that once we get Steve on here.
Let me make sure I can hear Steve, because Steve's in a different location.
This is just fantastic, ladies and gentlemen. Just fantastic.
This Steve played, he messed around with the Christmas juju, and now it's boomeranging back on all of us.
Off the dang rails.
If
off the rails.
Just leave Christmas in its proper place. We wouldn't have Nefarious haunting us right now. Come on,
Aaron disconnecting me when I brought up the shirt. That's a great troll, by the way.
Jill, you can hear Steve now, right?
I absolutely can.
Okay, I want the world to know that was my fault.
Okay, you trolled me there. That was good. It was brilliant. I busted out laughing when I saw that you just disconnected the feed. That was very well done. I respect it. I like it a lot.
I was not planned that way. It was necessity.
Right. It was purely a coincidence. We are brought to you by our friends over at Birch Gold, as you are watching the world lose its ever-loving mind. All right. Make sure that you get some assistance right now with your IRA or 401k and converting it into an IRA in gold. And the best news is you won't have to pay a penny out of pocket to do so. Just text the word Steve. That's my name. Say it, don't spray it. Text the word Steve to 98998. 98998 and get a free info kit on gold. There's no obligation, just information on fortifying your savings before the crazy really hits the fan, as if it hasn't already. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and thousands of happy customers, you can trust Birch Gold too. So text Steve to the number 989-898 for your free info kit today. Text Steve to 989-898. And don't forget, we have launched a brand new subscription tier here at Blaze TV. If you want to sign up or you want to move on up to Blaze Unlimited, part of it is the launch of our brand new quarterly magazine, Frontier, which is phenomenal craftsmanship, by the way. And the debut issue includes features from Chris Rufo, Mark Levin, Glenn Beck, and more. And it's just part of how we are raising the game here and taking a major step forward as a company in our fight against state-run media. So last year, we got rid of Google AdSense and everything else on theblaze.com and to get out of the censorship and just sell it directly to you. This is the next step in that process. So if you want to become a founding member of Blaze Unlimited, you'll receive a limited edition founding members card, even more behind-the-scenes content, VIP event access. And here's the big one, a chance to have your voice heard and join with us, all right, in trying to save the future of America. So if you want to get involved today, go to blazeunlimited.com/Deace to claim your spot. But don't wait. Founding member spots are limited. blazeunlimited.com/Deace. If you want to stand with us, push back, and keep the spirit of America alive, that's join Blaze Unlimited today. Next hour, it'll be Feedback Friday. But of course, at this hour, you know what time it is. It is time for the Deace Group. Your weekly look at the week that was begins, as it always does, with issue 1, Bleep Lord Nefarious Says.
I'm a knucklehead at times. country. He sought division, tried to build a wall.
That's part of our problem, particularly in democracies, in terms of building consensus around any issue. Putting out disinformation, our First Amendment stands as a major block to the ability to be able to just, hammer it out of existence.
He's an oppressor of civil liberties, megalomaniac Republican.
Oh, give me hope, Kamala. Hope, Kamala, give me hope, Kamala, for the election. Give me hope, Kamala. Hope, Kamala, hope for beating Donald Trump.
So what Biden should do, not that you asked, but when they passed that law, the Supreme Court passed that ruling, where they said, you're not the president, you're the king, which is what that ruling is. You can do whatever you want. You can never be, held responsible. I thought, Biden's still the president. No one seems to notice, but Biden should dissolve the Supreme Court.
Don't want a president of the USA who's dangerous to everyone. Oh, give me hope, Kamala.
It is our lowest income communities and our communities of color that are most impacted by these extreme conditions and impacted by issues that are not of their own making. And so absolutely. And so we have to address this in a way that is about giving resources based on equity. And the federal relief and assistance that we have been providing has included FEMA providing $750 for folks who need immediate needs being met.
Right now, we have to strengthen Ukraine's position on the battlefield. And that's why today I'm proud to announce a new $2.4 billion package of security assistance.
So our potential first gentleman, Doug, Kamala Harris's husband, is all over the headlines right now. He is accused of slapping his ex-girlfriend. This is an ex-girlfriend from 2012. He's accused of slapping her so hard in the face that she spun around in a valet line. And this is according to 3 close friends.
Second gentleman Doug Emhoff is facing intense scrutiny today for an affair he had back in 2009 when he was married to his first wife, Kirsten. Emhoff and his first wife were living here in Los Angeles with their 2 children, Ella and Cole, when the affair began. The other woman was a teacher here at the Emhoff Children's private elementary school. She was 10 years younger than Emhoff, and he admits it cost him his marriage. You heard that she had become pregnant?
I did hear she became pregnant.
And what did you hear beyond that?
That's where the dead end seemed to be. None of the, half dozen people I talked to ever knew whether she had had a child or not.
Important part, an interesting part of how people have talked about your role here is how your role has reshaped the perception of masculinity. And I'm not sure you planned on that, but you are an incredibly supportive spouse. Has that been an evolution for you? And do you think that's part of the role you might play as first gentleman?
It's funny, I've started to think a lot about this. I've always been like this. My dad was like this.
In today's world, I'll cripple you. I will cripple you, and you have no idea what that means.
I've become friends with school shooters.
Actually, you know what? I think after watching that, this world needs a little bit of Clark Griswold right about now, as a matter of fact. I think so. I do. Or Jesus. Needs that too. What?
I think he wants to walk away.
That funky music. All right.
He's still going.
Let's get to it. Jill, first question goes to you as the lady and the guest. As if it's not very obvious, I'll ask it anyway. What was the most horrible of the horribles that you were just subjected to?
The Constitution, Steve. Who needs it? It's only the greatest form of government ever created. But you know what? We are so advanced beyond that. It's 2024. So can we just get rid of the whole thing? Whoever that woman was that was saying, oh, Joe Biden, you know what he should do? He should just get rid of the Supreme Court. Yeah, great idea. Let's start there. And then let's move on to John Kerry talking about misinformation in the First Amendment. Well, I still want to go back and point out every single time that the number one topic at Davos this year was talking about mis and disinformation, you guys. It's not a surprise. It's not a secret to anyone that we keep hearing this talking point come back up over and over and over again by those on the left because they really hate the First Amendment. You guys are standing in their way with this little thing that you think you have the right to say whatever you want to say. It reminds me of Barack Obama saying this is a charter of negative liberties. How dare you stand in our way and just limit the things that the government can do? Can't you just give in to us already, everyone? The Constitution needs to go away. That was definitely the worst of the week for me.
Todd, do I have to ask you what was the worst of the week? I know now what my worst of the week was. I just watched it, courtesy of you.
I've got a song in my heart. I've got a song in my heart. Is that what pumpkin spice feels like? More. In its totality.
I don't know. I just had some pumpkin spice right before we got on the show, and I've never done that in my entire life. I've never have. No. But go ahead.
My dance was your shirt incarnate. That's what just happened. In its totality, Aaron, brilliant, utterly brilliant. I'm taking it all, and it's heinous. It's heinous, but it's proudly and actively endorsed by Dick Cheney and David French. Prominent Republicans of the last how many decades? See, there's a whole wing of our side that sees that and says, great success. Folks, wake up. The reality is something else, ain't it? And there's a lot of people right now that need to come to terms with the fact you can laugh all you want and you can point fingers all you want, but the people that have worn our jersey are saying, that's my gal.
You know, I used to lament this. It's been a while since I brought this up, but this is going to be the most humiliating conquering of all time. I mean, there's no Alexander the Great here. There's no Genghis Khan. There's no Attila the Hun. There's no Iron Curtain.
There's dancing.
There's a UK family singing about American politics in the style of like a Jamaican, whatever musical style that is.
We've got the vibes.
We are going down to the absolute dumbest, most effeminate conquering force ever contrived. This might be the greatest demonic troll of all time.
Sing it with me now.
Watching Western civilization go down to the guys that carried the team equipment. We're going down to the guys that carried the team equipment, guys. We're going down to them. We're going down to the guys who carried your gym bags on a football Friday night. That's who we're going down to.
We're going to be comfortable doing it too.
Going down to them. Aaron.
Everybody in my mentions right now saying I committed a hate crime or they're cutting themselves right now. I just want you to know, I heard that song this week, so you do too. I'm the victim here. Let's not get that twisted. Let's go to the just wonderful human being that Doug Emhoff seems to be. I mean, conflicting reports, whether it was in his first marriage, the nanny, or a teacher, one of the things, but he admitted that affair happened. Conflicting reports whether he forced that woman to kill the resulting baby. Wonderful people here. Wonderful people.
It's about joy. It's about joy, Aaron.
Joy. Got the joy down in my heart. Indeed. That's the worst.
Yes. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the odds, it was really Tim Walz's passion that made his eyes get that wide during the VP debate, as Politico claimed earlier this week, ridiculously. I cannot believe that place used to cut me checks to write for them. Incredible. And 10 being the odds that Lindsey Graham's eyes got wide when he gazed upon Tim Walz's passion. Rank this week's level of total depravity, Jill.
12.
12. Nice.
She understood the assignment. What she said. Yes.
Aaron.
10.
Lindsey Graham rated it a 12 as well. Before we continue on, this part of the show brought to you by our friends over at Jace Medical, as we're about to have a serious conversation about what Jill just witnessed when she went down with Mercury 1 to North Carolina yesterday. Another reminder that even when government is not actively trying to kill you, which is what they were doing during COVID, they cannot necessarily be trusted to be there for you in either case. And there's a lot of people right now suffering, and right, I got to tell you, man, I got on the phone with like every backup person I knew yesterday, watching what's going on in North Carolina, and you should too. And just get a backup, have that peace of mind to know that if something like this happens, and you know they're not coming for us. Well, they're coming for us, but not the way we had hoped. We're on our own here, and we need to build as much of a community within and amongst ourselves as we can, and that's what Jace Medical can do when it comes to some of the most important antibiotics of all time, and you can expand it to a lot of your medications that you need as well. Get the Jace case today. Do not hesitate. Do not hesitate. Go to jace.com, JASE. Use the promo code DACE to get a discount. Promo code DACE to get a discount at jace.com, JASE. Promo code DACE. Get a discount today at jace.com/DACE. Use the promo code DACE. All right, for issue 2 here, Jill, we're just going to turn this over to you. You were on the ground yesterday with Glenn Beck and his Mercury 1 charity. You were part of the party that went in there to oversee some of the damage, survey it, and some of the charitable work that Mercury 1 is doing. And so, just put your Blaze, News Tonight reporter hat on here and just tell us, Jill, what did you see yesterday down there in North Carolina?
Yeah, Steve, I think a lot of people have seen the devastation on the news, and it was one thing to be flying in a helicopter over that and seeing just the vast array of devastation mile after mile, where it makes sense then to say, oh, all these roads are shut down. It's really hard to get supplies in. Really, a helicopter is the most efficient way to get around right now. And the devastation is completely vast. When we were looking at houses that you could see washed down the river, completely flipped over, cars everywhere, flooded, the railroad tracks that we would drive by, they're built to last, you guys. They're railroad tracks. All of the sides, all of the gravel on the sides was completely torn down. So everything in the town where we were in Asheville is going to have to be rebuilt, right? There's still a couple buildings that are left standing, but by and large, there is going to be a complete rebuild of Western North Carolina that we saw out there. And we did see one FEMA truck. There were about 8 or 10 of us in a van that were driving around when we got there on the ground. And we drove by and we had to come back. It wasn't until we came back and Glenn actually was sitting in the front seat and looked over to the side and he goes, wait, I think I just saw a FEMA truck. Turn around, let's go see it. There was indeed one FEMA truck. It was a satellite truck. They got into town on Wednesday night. Mind you, the storm started on Thursday, really got bad on Friday. Waters had started to subside on Saturday. The FEMA truck got in town on Wednesday night, and they went, oh, man, it was really tough getting in here. We're like, yeah, you guys, it was the hurricane. Like, you're FEMA. How do you not know that it's difficult to get in to a location like this? So then we
trust the experts, Jill.
We were with Congressman Corey Mills. Him and Glenn together walked over to talk to the FEMA directors there. And they said, oh, yeah, we couldn't get set up until today. And we're just hoping that people can see us. And we're like, you can't even see you from the road right now. We were driving by and it was like, Corey said, it was like playing Where's Waldo to try and find this. Mind you, on the other side of this building is where a lot of people are going for supplies. They have water, they have food on the other side. It was like a Lowe's greenhouse, if you will, situation on the other side. So what does FEMA do? They pick the other side of the building where no one can see them. And then the directors were saying, oh, well, you know, we're going to put it out there on the news that this is where we're located. Oh, okay. Are you familiar with what's just happened in town? No one has power. And then the guy goes, oh, no. But even if they don't have TV or anything right now, they can go out to their cars. A lot of people are going out to their cars to charge their phone, and they're getting the news that way. And we're like, you mean all the cars that are flipped over and flooded that we just drove by? I mean, you could just literally turn your head and see the cars that were wiped out. That's what you're saying? You think that's going to happen? And then the guy goes, well, I think we're going to go door to door. Then the director, Patricia, comes out and says, oh, no, we don't have any plans to go door to door, but we do think we might set up over at the car wash because it's actually higher up on the hill and people can see it from the street, right? This is the response by the government, is one satellite truck that hasn't done anything. They're waiting for people to come to them so they can sign them up and put them on the list. Meanwhile, what Mercury One has done is they have a group that they're working with a ton of people on the ground there. And it's all the veterans, you guys. It's special forces, former special forces that are running the show right now in Asheville, North Carolina. And they are incredible. There's a guy, Adam Smith. He's kind of the de facto leader right now out there. And Adam has taken it upon himself and all the others that they're working with. They have a Harley Davidson that has a big grassy field behind it. That's where all the helicopters are landing. They've just decided this is the spot. This is where we're doing it. They went from just a few pallets of water to now they are the largest donation center in the entire city. What Mercury One and what the audience of The Blaze has done is incredible. They still need work. If you feel the need to donate, which I hope that you do in your hearts, mercury1.org is where you should go to donate, because they are still going to need so much more done. But once we were there, we were going to take off and go tour some more of the damage. But right before we took off, they got a medical emergency, and Corey said, "Hey, you guys, we have to go respond to this. We have the helicopter. We need to go save this person." So it was an elderly lady. She had just had surgery. She needed to get to a hospital. On a good day, it would take 2 hours to get down the mountain. Our helicopter pilot said it would probably take 5 or 6 hours right now with the conditions of the roads to get her there. So she needed help. We needed to go save her. And you know what really struck out to me? They didn't call 911 to come get her. They called, it was an ex-military, called another ex-military, called another ex-military that got to us, that got to our team and said, you know what, this is her address. If you can, go pick her up. And that's what we did. We landed in the back of some guy's yard in the mountains of North Carolina, and we hopped in. We were walking down, just literally trying to find this address. And a guy goes, "Oh, y'all need a ride? Here, that's my truck right there. Get in." So here's Glenn Beck, Corey Mills, myself, the rest of the Mercury One team in the back of a guy's pickup truck, going down the road to try and find this woman. And we eventually get her loaded up on the helicopter and dropped her off at the hospital. And that was the fighting spirit, though. The people that we saw in that town, both Corey and Glenn said it within a minute of each other and not even hearing themselves. They said, "This is God's army right now. These are the people that are going to save us." And it left me with such hope. It was the devastation at first. It was the hope that we saw from the people on the ground that I'll never forget.
Todd and Aaron, you guys have any questions you want to ping Jill with while we're on this topic?
Well, she brings up an important contrast, and I want to make sure it's highlighted and explicit. This is a grotesque failure by the so-called experts. And which level of failure from which experts is it going to finally convince us that this happened, and they do this to us because these men who are God's army are not the norm. That's who we are called to be as Christian men, regardless of whether there's a FEMA or not, regardless of whether they fail or not. That's our duty. And because it isn't on a regular basis, the so-called experts see us as a mark, and they take advantage of us, and they subdue us, and they hurt us, and they like it. This isn't happening just in a vacuum because of disaster. It's happening because these men stood up and did what all men are called to do every single day. And when you see it with your own eyes, like Jill, you can see in her face, it's something special. It's something that you don't want to go back from once you try it on. And all of us need to do better. We aren't doing enough in our own lives, and that's why our experts suck so badly. It's part of the plan.
Amen. And Jill, did you talk to anyone, whether it was Congressman Mills or any leadership on the ground there? Did you hear any rumors or any rumblings of efforts by any authority at any level, whether it's federal with FEMA or whether it's local authorities, to scuttle search and recovery efforts?
Yes, Adam Smith, who I mentioned before, former Special Forces, the de facto leader down there, he had been approached by either it was FEMA or state or federal officials, and they said, you're not operating with the proper licenses to distribute all this stuff, so we're going to need you to take your stuff over here. And Todd, you will be very happy because he basically said, that's not going to happen. You guys can set up camp somewhere further. And he, in not so nice of words, you're not going to come back here because you haven't shown up yet. We have been here for 5 days without you. We don't need your help now. If this is what you're going to come in and do, please move on and try and help somebody else because we have this under control.
How far can you stick that where the sun don't shine? That's the response to that. Amen.
How are we supposed to see stuff like that and just not attribute it to malice?
See, that's Sons of Liberty stuff, though. I've talked about that before. That is where, you didn't want to be the bureaucrat, the court of King James, sent into their neighborhoods to say, hey, the king's got some thoughts on and some new regulations. You weren't coming out of there. You were lucky. The best case scenario, tarred and feathered. That was on a lenient day, tarred and feathered. Okay. Yeah, you did not want to draw that assignment. That was often a one-way trip. Those parts of the colonies were ungovernable. And that's essentially what we are going to have to become because the social compact is broken. We have to become ungovernable. And what you just articulated there, Jill, is a group of men who said, "No, you guys failed us. So we're not. So you broke the compact. We're ungovernable. We'll handle this ourselves. Get the bleep out of here." And a variation of that theme will have to be articulated comprehensively on multiple fronts moving forward because of what we talked about on this show yesterday. So, Jill, I don't want to trivialize the suffering there. I don't. But we do have an election here in 4.5 weeks, and this is one of the pivotal states in this process. So can you give us, since you were there on the ground, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1, you think they'll be able to pull it off per some form of normality, 10, cataclysmic, no idea how they're going to do it. Prorate this out for 4 weeks and quickly tell us how much you think this may impact the election in terms of just the operational aspect of it.
I can tell you a story that I heard yesterday. There was a man who was rescued off the mountain as soon as he got down there and was, back with people that could do anything. He goes, how do I vote right now? I need to do this right now. How do I do this? I will tell you, the people there are very aware of what's going on in terms of the election, in terms of what may or may not be done to them. I think it's going to be difficult, but I will tell you, these people are determined to vote.
All right, thank you, Jill. We'll come back. More of the Deace Group here in just a few moments. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, we are powered by our friends over at Magic Spoon. As a kid, you loved eating cereal. I just saw that today is the 44th anniversary of when Thundar the Barbarian debuted on ABC Saturday morning cartoons. Todd, do you remember Thundar the Barbarian?
I do remember the title. I couldn't tell you what it looks like or what it was about.
I freaking loved. He had like this like wannabe lightsaber from a post-apocalyptic future. Okay, I freaking loved Thundar the Barbarian as a kid. We had a lot of days, a lot of bowls of cereal, Super Friends, and then Thundar the Barbarian there on ABC on Saturday mornings. So if you want to go back to those memories, but without the sugar and with a ton of protein, Magic Spoon has big news for you. They have turned their super popular cereals into high protein treats that are light, crispy, and taste just like those classic crunchy cereal bars. Magic Spoon's brand new treats are so delicious, they've already become a lot of people's favorite snack. You can even use them as an after workout snack because of the protein that is in there. All right. So every serving of Magic Spoon cereal has 13 grams of protein, 0 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs so that you can feel good about what you're eating. The most popular flavors are fruity and cocoa, but there's so many more. And when it comes to their brand new treats, they're crispy, crunchy, airy, and an easy way to get 11 grams of protein on the go. And for the first time ever, Magic Spoon treats are available in grocery stores with delicious flavors like marshmallow and chocolatey peanut butter. But you can get $5 off your next order if you do this. Go to magicspoon.com/Deace, magicspoon.com/Deace, or look for Magic Spoon in your nearest grocery store. That's magicspoon.com/Deace for $5 off. Magic Spoon, hold on to the dream. Let's welcome back in Jill Savage here as we continue on with our weekly look at the week that was. And let's get to issue 3, Israel's next move.
Iran launched almost 200 ballistic missiles towards Israel on Tuesday. The Israeli military said most of the missiles were intercepted, but a small number struck central and southern Israel. The only person reported to have been killed was a so-called Palestinian in the West Bank. It was Iran's second such attack on Israel this year after it launched about 300 small rockets and drones in April. The Israel Defense Force said the attack involved more than 180 missiles, which tallied with Iranian state media reports saying that about 200 missiles were launched. The U.S. said the attack was nearly twice the scope of what happened in April. On Wednesday, the IDF said several Air Force bases were damaged in the missile attack, but that no aircraft were damaged. Israel has vowed retaliatory strikes on Iran, and President Biden said the U.S. was fully supportive of Israel.
All right, so Todd, I'll start this question with you. What do you think Bibi Netanyahu does next?
Well, you remember that conversation in the movie Major League when the old pitcher, kind of at the end of his time, looks like he's 40 years old, a Gaylord Perry type, and it's early in the movie, and he talks about they're having some locker room problems. And he says, it's one thing if a man goes out to his front yard, strips buck naked, and barks at the new moon. It's another thing if he does it in my living room. Mm-hmm. I think after October 7th, Israel looked that conversation in the mirror. And a lot of people who weren't so keen on Bibi for all kinds of reasons, tone, whatever, suddenly like, kind of feeling you, Bibi. And so I think from October 7th to this point, there's been kind of this coming to terms with that, including, I'm sure, within the military. I wish we had a guy like Josh Hammer on right now to confirm, but like everybody kind of feeling each other, looking at each other like, I want to do this. Are you with me? And I need you with me, and I can't do it without you, but we're in now, right? So I think Bibi is going to go as far as he knows he can go, as long as the military in particular is willing to go with him. And I think he's going to constantly remind him, October 7th happened. This isn't theoretical. That even, our history goes back to 1948. There are people still alive who are around at that time. But, it's not just some distant wafting memory. The blood and the death is now. What are we prepared to do?
Aaron, how would you answer that question?
Well, I think if you needed pretext to actually strike and strike hard Iranian infrastructure, whether it's oil or whether it's their air supports, I mean, this sounds callous, but you couldn't have asked for a better pretext. I mean, these were ballistic missiles that we're talking about. None of your people were killed. Yes, there was some damage, but there was still the entirety of Israel was basically on high alert on Tuesday. Nobody, no Israeli was killed. So if they want to go, and I'm not talking in the context of whether or not the United States should help or what have you. I'm just analyzing this as best as I can geopolitically. This is an opportunity for Israel to maybe cripple some elements of Iran's ability to do this again to them. So, you never want to say, well, good day. There was a positive outcome from a ballistic missile attack, but if they have the pretext now to hit Iran and hit Iran hard, and I'm talking about them, not the United States.
Jill?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Todd and Aaron just said. I think that now they do have the support that they need behind him. I'm actually kind of shocked that Joe Biden came out and said anything at all. Just one, he's speaking. That's incredible. Two, that he's actually on the side of Israel right now. That's what we need to have. And that's just the fact that they are coming up on the October 7th anniversary on Monday. Iran is still throwing ballistic missiles through the sky at them. I think this is the time where Bibi will have the coalition that he needs to just start, bombs away at this point in time.
Define bombs away. To what end?
To what end? I don't enough to just have an equal strike back. Whatever they did to Israel, they could do that equally. Now, I don't think that Israel, I don't know if this is going to be the fight. I hope it's not. I hope we have more time. I look at what's going on geopolitically across the entire world right now, and it feels like it's the time that is going to just boil over for Israel, for Ukraine, for Russia, everything. I hope it's not, but I think that it will. I mean, months, years. I think it's more in the terms of months than we're talking years right now.
Are we talking about? To me, the lowest stakes. Let me put it this way. Let me define it then. My own analysis is, at a minimum, Bibi is going to try to permanently destroy Iran's nuclear capability. I think that is, at a minimum, what they will try to do. And then, the maximum, something that would try to initiate a regime change in Iran. So let's say that those are the two tent poles. Where would you be at? Each of you.
So
the first option.
Yeah. That's probably where I would be. That's probably where I'd be down with it. Do we all agree that Iran, in that region of the world, when it comes to the major players, are they still a pariah? Are they anywhere from annoyance to pariah?
For the most part, yes. And that's what they've been trying to change. They have been trying to draw Israel into a wider conflict, to ingratiate themselves to the wider Muslim world. Again, for those that don't understand, Iran is not an Arab country. It is a Persian country. It is kind of considered a redheaded stepchild even within Islam. So, one of the theories that is one of the operating theories for decades is that Iran's hyperpenchant to radicalism on a statewide basis. Remember, all the radicals that did 9/11 were mostly from Saudi Arabia. But the systemic radicalism there that exists within Iran, even as a nation state, some have surmised is kind of an overcompensation, a way to generate respect and street cred within the Islamic world, where they are considered a bit of a pariah. Them and the Saudis do not like each other at all. The Trump administration did a masterful job triangulating off of that to isolate Iran. Iran tried testing that back in April, and both Jordan and the Saudis came to the defense of Israel. So those alliances from the Trump era, outlived the Trump administration itself. So yeah, they would like to change that. They're trying to draw Israel into a. This is the gambit. If you're BB, is you need to, and this is probably your only chance left given your age and the current political environment. You need to do something that mortally wounds Iran, but you cannot get drawn into a wider conflict at the same time that then forces other Islamic regimes to choose Iran over you at the same time. Now, what that line is, guys, I don't know. That's beyond. That's why I kind of put it in these two extremes. But somewhere in there is that line, right, where the Saudis and the Jordanians have the cover, okay, to look the other way and say, we can't stand Iran either, spank them for us. Or do you go so far that now, Islam unite, basically? And I don't know what that line is, but that's what the Israelis, to me, that's my own analysis. That's what they have to figure that out and navigate it.
See, I still think for the latter to happen, regime change to happen, Iran has to buck either the Saudis or the Jordanians in some way. Still, even after all of this, I don't think there's, as of yet, any strike on Israel directly from Iran that will cause the Saudis or the Jordanians or any of the other players there to say, well, this has gone too far. They could do that to us now. I think it's going to take a direct bucking of one of those players before they just say, it's time to go. It's time for the mullahs to go. It's time for this whole thing to go.
All right, let's get to the exit question. What is more likely to happen? Full-scale war between Iran and Israel or full-scale war over Ukraine? Jill.
Full-scale war over Ukraine. It's we can't help ourselves. We're obsessed with Ukraine in the United States right now, and I think that's the one that would get at least our attention.
Todd?
Iran and Israel. Ukraine, down that fake Wakanda rabbit hole there, this is all about something other than what we're really being allowed to see, and it would be exposed if we actually went to a conventional war.
That's an interesting point. Yeah.
Yeah,
Aaron?
I think it's probably Iran or Israel just because of the immediacy of what we just saw this week.
All right, let's get to our kicker topic. So some surveys came out this week about 59% of Christians, only 59% of Christians, I think, said this to Barna, that they plan on voting in the upcoming election. So, each of you, given the time we have, each of you gets 60 seconds, the three of you do, for our kicker topic. What would you say to a Christian who isn't planning to vote in this election? You each get 60 seconds. All right, Jill, you get to go first. Go ahead.
I would say it's your moral obligation to do so, to go and vote. And yes, is Donald Trump out there saying things that we don't agree with 100%? Absolutely. Could it be helped if he stopped his wife from going out there and saying even worse things about abortion? Yeah. Let's put this back on track, though. The country is either still a republic, barely hanging on by a string, or not at all, right? We started it out with John Kerry saying, all this misinformation, First Amendment, everything. Your way of life is at stake in this election. Again, we know that things are bad right now. Could they be better? Absolutely. Is it going to get better or worse under Kamala Harris? It is going to get definitively worse. We have an obligation to maintain Christianity, our Judeo-Christian way of life, and that is by voting this election.
Todd, 60 seconds for you.
Yeah, I would just say you're way too comfortable in your thinking, and I've been doing a lot of work on this on Twitter. Back when we did not vote for Republicans, and all of us here haven't, the loss would mean that we would all be living in 70s and 80s New York City, which is not something we'd prefer. But it's not a worst case scenario. Now the best case scenario is the 70s, 80s, and New York. And the alternative is Sodom and Gomorrah. And as Jill just laid out, they like hurting you. It's not that just they're inept. They enjoy making you feel pain. And you need to come to terms with that. And your pious meditations are not going to keep them from raping your wives and your daughters and transing your sons. They're living in a different world. Steve calls it a negative world, and rightly so. You need to wake up to reality.
Aaron?
I would ask why, and then I would just say, whatever the odds are that you get the hung cow knock at your door go up exponentially. depending on the results of this election. Do you understand what is on the table here? Do you understand the state of play in this country? Where we are this close, we are on the brink, despite what you may hear some people say. We are on the brink. That doesn't mean that if we vote the one way or another, that doesn't mean if Donald Trump is elected, that doesn't mean, no, it just means that we're buying ourselves a little bit of extra time. So at the end of the day, if you are not voting, and you're not saying voting for Donald Trump, just not voting in general, you're just not with it. You have a better shot at raising your family the way that you see fit, the way that you believe God has called you to raise your family. If Kamala Harris is not elected, you have a better shot at that. Do you want that or not? Do you know what time it is or do you not?
All right, let's get to predictions. We've got about a minute and a half. Jill, you get to go first. Go ahead.
Well, I saw a sliver of, I believe, what is going to be coming down for everyone in North Carolina. Their card was pulled this time. We will have it all for the rest of us at some point, and I hope and pray that we respond the way that these people have, and the veterans in North Carolina have been outstanding, and I would urge everybody to go through and donate at mercuryone.org if you can. But my prediction is it's them right now. It's going to be us at some point in time. And what are you going to do? Are you going to be ready for it? And I certainly hope that we are. Todd, go.
In order to address the very kind of voters that you talked about in there, Steve, you asked us to respond to, Ron DeSantis is going to give one of the greatest and most important speeches in American political history to address them and tell them why this moment requires that they do what he did and get behind Donald Trump.
All right, Aaron, quickly, go.
The election will not come down to Pennsylvania. It's going to actually come down to one or two states that nobody expects. I don't know what those states will be, but it's going to come down to one or two states that nobody expects.
My prediction is that Trump is going to have coattails in the Ohio U.S. Senate race, and he's going to help Bernie Moreno upset incumbent Sherrod Brown in that U.S. Senate race. That's my prediction, actually. Jill, great stuff as always. Good to see you. All right, thank you very much, Jill. We're going to come back. When we do, it'll be your turn with Feedback Friday. Stay tuned right here on The Blaze. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, here on Blaze TV, radio and podcast. Hour 2 underway. I'm Steve Deace with Aaron McIntyre and Todd Erzin and all of you. And you can let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. Just email us, steve@stevedeace.com, DEACE. Like us on Facebook, me, we, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And then if you are a podcast listener, let me make sure to mention this too. Please subscribe to our new YouTube channel as well, at Deace Show on YouTube, at Deace Show on YouTube. We're starting all over there from scratch just because too much censorship. We told too much truth for YouTube, so we're going to try starting all over there. At Deace Show, if you could go there and subscribe on YouTube, we would appreciate it. And if you are a podcast listener, let us know that you love the show. Leave us a 5-star review. We appreciate all of you that have done that. You can also hit subscribe, or if you're on iTunes, follow, and that will assure that every time we do a new episode, it will show up there in your podcast feed every single time. We want to welcome a brand new partner here to the show, and forgive me, normally when we get to a newbie, I make sure to mention it right off at the top of the program, but I was a little thrown off by the fact I was censored by my own staff at the top of the show and sent scrambling. So again, I am, like Aaron proclaimed earlier, I am a victim here. I am a victim. So let me make sure to give top billing here at the top of hour 2 to our brand new partner at Farmer Bills, right? We all know how lean the supply chains are right now, and increasingly our beef industry is dominated by the big 4 meat packers, which are backed by, some of them anyway, Chinese money. All right. That's why I want to tell you about this new America First beef company that just launched out of South Dakota. Their name is Farmer Bills. And they're not just selling beef, it's beef biltong. Now, conventional beef jerky is loaded with sugar, soy, nitrates, fillers. Biltong is an air-dried delicacy that America is just now discovering. It's a cured meat snack without the sugar, soy, nitrates, and fillers. And Farmer Bill's is an America-first company with a fully American supply chain. They source their beef and bison from the grasslands of South Dakota and support from American ranchers. They sell pre-sliced biltong as well as 1 pound charcuterie slabs, and these slabs are like massive dry-aged ribeye with marbled fat and the perfect amount of spices and salt. Their flavors include original beef. The one that I have had a chance to try, the spicy chili beef, it was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Original bison, spicy chili bison. So why reach for, a protein bar that might be full of carbs or highly processed beef jerky? Instead, you can go to FarmerBillsProvisions.com. FarmerBillsProvisions.com. Try their best seller bundle. Get all 4 flavors, an original biltong slab, and their grass-fed tallow balm. Use code Steve for 10% off your order. That's their best seller bundle, and it ships for free. If you use the code Steve, you'll get 10% off today. Code Steve at FarmerBillsProvisions.com. Bills and provisions, plural there. Put the S on the end. FarmerBillsProvisions.com. Use Steve as your discount code for 10% off. And like I said, I tried the spicy chili beef, and it was outstanding. All right, gentlemen, you guys ready for some Feedback Friday?
Indeed.
All right, let's begin here with this note from John. He says, I was a CNC machinist programmer for 26 years. Aaron's comments about automation not being a good thing overall, I can see why you guys might be thinking that way. However, I think I can say that with the ports, if the ports don't automate the moving of freight as a nation, we will fall behind eventually and be even worse shape, a worse situation than my example that I saw during the late 80s. I worked for a specialty cutting tool manufacturer in the aerospace, and our primary competitors were Japanese companies, and 10 years later, the Chinese. We were able to compete with Japanese manufacturers with some computer numerical controlled automation, but when the Chinese started manufacturing, that was a different animal. Our company wouldn't commit to going to full automation, and as with so many manufacturing jobs, it dwindled to a plant closure. This looks like a similar situation, and it should have been addressed about 20 years ago through trade schools teaching welding, CNC machining, electrical, etc. Unfortunately, there's no easy fix now. And there's another aspect to this too, to what John is pointing out in terms of just competing on global markets. That's national security, right? I mean, that's also national security. Where are a lot of these automation parts probably manufactured, guys?
China.
Yeah. Where are a lot of these probably automation hubs? Probably a lot of them come from probably where? So the last part that John said there, gentlemen, to me, when we get into these geopolitical economic issues, that last part is key. Because we don't necessarily have an American, like we talk all the time about the lack of a parallel economy to avoid, as consumers, to avoid, spending money directly with people who hate you. We just don't have that right now. Well, what about on the production side of things? I mean, one of my best buddies helped oversee the PPE equipment acquisition for the Trump White House because they didn't want it, because it was all being made prior to COVID. It all came from China. Well, if they're the ones that leaked the virus, do we want to be taking our PPE from the people that poisoned us? So, he was, calling me regularly from Puerto Rico. We had to figure out how we're going to manufacture all that stuff domestically on the fly. So that last line, there's no easy fix now, applies to a lot of this. We're one big, happy Council on Foreign Relations globalist family here. Until we're not. And then when there isn't an alternative means of production, when we need it the most, where do we go? You guys have any thoughts on that dilemma? Because I think this applies in multiple endeavors in our society right now.
I completely agree with that analysis, and I'll add on to the complexities of this. And it's one thing as a younger man, because we were comfortable, and I certainly was, and you just think about things theoretically, and ultimately not realizing everything is a theological problem, as Steve has recently said. If you go towards automation, one of the most fundamental questions of that was what work then does everybody do?
Mm-hmm.
This is a huge issue. Because listen, let's face it, we've been in many ways going towards automation in many respects. Quite frankly, fast food, that's a sort of automation, and just the ease with which many of us can just drive up and get on the assembly line and get the food while, some plebe takes care. And it makes us soft. I think one variable we absolutely have to look in the eye is as we automate everything, who do we become as human beings?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
This is the can of worms.
Wall-E. That's who we become.
Yes.
Wall-E.
This is the can of worms that I talked about on Overtime on Wednesday, that we opened up with that buy-seller hold submission. Because if the World Economic Forum acolytes had their way, everyone's jobs would be replaced with automation, and everyone would have a universal basic income. And I've even heard right-leaning and conservative commentators, in the theoretical discuss, well, yeah, if we, even under a capitalistic worldview, there might just come a time where everything is automated, so there might be a need for a universal basic income. No, this goes out of the realm of economics and goes into the realm of religion and or philosophy. What are we about as humans? What is our job here as humans? What is our purpose in being on this mortal coil? And this intersects that issue just 1-to-1 in my estimation. So on the one hand, yeah, I mean, from what I've heard, the longshoremen, they make a pretty good living. They're also really important, as it stands now, cog in our economy. Really important. So do they deserve that income? Do they deserve to make a nice living, especially the lashers, the people who are out there in New York in the winter trying to make sure that boats are loaded correctly, really risking life and limb? Do they deserve a nice income? Yeah. Do they deserve a 77% pay increase, or else everything else is going to be crippled? No, that's extortion. But the further down the rabbit hole you go with this, if they are replaced with, if automation takes over, this is really a question about what do we think we are doing here? What are our priorities? And along the lines of what this emailer said and what Todd was saying, is that somewhere, really what we're talking about, somewhere along the lines, down to the human level, we lost our priorities.
Mm-hmm.
What are we here to do? What is our purpose? As young people, maybe it was in your generation, as young people began to say, what can I do with my life? That question was, what do I like? What do I like? That's what I'm going to get a degree in. What do I like to do? Instead of, what can I actually make money off of? What am I good at? And, what do I like to do? The intersection of those three things, if possible. But somewhere along the lines, we started living for ourselves instead of our posterity.
And the dirty little secret about the North American Free Trade Agreement and all free trade agreements is that they're not, this isn't just because, well, the Italians have olives and we have corn. No, it more than that, it's about the fact that there's Mexicans and Taiwanese and
that'll do these jobs
that we don't want to do.
Yep.
See,
yep. That right there, I completely agree with that. I understand dealing with human beings is complicated and frustrating because we're all complicated and frustrating. We're sinners. I understand dealing with unions has a very checkered history and present. Dealing with corporations, the same. But when there's a human element involved, there still remains the possibility of humanities and connecting humanity, making a difference in what's better for the human condition. Todd, hold on to your seat. All right. And you are about, if you've got a cigar, you're going to light it up. Red Auerbach style with what I'm going to say next. Okay. My concern with automation, if the social compact wasn't broken, then I think we could be afforded the luxury of what is the best and most efficient process.
Yep.
What will make the greatest amount of goods the most inexpensive and affordable for the most amount of people, so that therefore businesses can earn a profit and the average consumer can afford the things that they want and desire. If the social compact wasn't broken, then I think we would be afforded the luxury of looking at this. You can never look at it exclusively as an economic argument. We're dealing with people. So even with an intact social compact, somebody's losing a job, somebody's losing a career for nothing that they did wrong. Somebody's losing a livelihood for nothing that they did wrong. And so the idea that we just treat those people, you go full Bob Seger, feel like a number. They're just, an employee number. No, they're people made in the likeness and image of God. Okay. But we also cannot construct a perfect society either. And when we try, that's when we have the most amount of tyranny every single time. So if we had an intact social compact, then my analysis would be, what does the most good? It doesn't only do good, because again, people are going to lose their jobs. But what does the most good for the most people? The more efficient system that provides the most profit for companies, so they'll hire and produce more, and the most affordable goods and services, so people can afford to purchase them. Okay, but our social compact is broken. And that means things like, if we just automate all these jobs, we don't have instant industries to put all these people into. And then who will do the automation? Who will oversee the automation? And it seems to me that looking at automation aside in a vacuum as strictly an economic process or an ergonomical one, and not in light of the broader geopolitical realities, is instant replaying the American economy. You have essentially eliminated altogether the human element now. And there's an idea that everything comes down to then what is the search for perfection? Everything's technocratic. And instead of, I just need an instant replay, I got blocked off. Did the guy get 2 feet in bounds or not? Well, I mean, is that blade of grass? Is it kicking up white? I mean, okay, you see what I'm saying? Well, I just needed to know, did the guy launch himself at the quarterback to break his neck or not? Well, I don't know. I mean, did the quarterback duck? And these things go on 15, 20 minutes. Okay. This idea that we can always get it right, not if we can get it right, let's get it right. No. We can always get it right, which is another way of saying we are gods. We can't always get it right. Are American companies going to be the ones providing the machinery for this automation? Are American companies going to be the ones overseeing the automation? Or are we going to do, like voting, where, offshore companies that are global conglomerates and in no way, shape, or form accountable to the American people are going to be the ones that accumulate and count the votes for us? And if you decide as an election official, as a local election official, I think I've got the purview to look into that and see if it's on the up and up. You'll get sentenced to 9 years in prison. That's what happened yesterday. because this seems to me like the offshore digital voting machine version of economics. I understand. I love what DeSantis did yesterday. Basically, DeSantis saved America. I don't know how else to put it. I mean, it just basically saved America. When he said, "Hey, we don't have time right now for the typical labor dispute, labor management tension. We don't have time for that right now. People are dying. We're in a national disaster. So I'm sending out the National Guard to replace these dock workers." Man, it was like an hour later they settled this thing,
yep.
Right? Okay. Because the human element matters more. I understand that hearing that guy from the Longshoremen Union that reports anywhere from $500,000 to $700,000 a year he's making, whatever it is, it's more than me. I make more than I made last year, and last year was the best year I ever had. And to hear him say, "We will break you, we'll crush you," like Khrushchev in the middle of all the other issues we have, I know that is extremely frustrating. But when we leave human beings involved, that provides the opportunity for someone like a Ron DeSantis to come in and say, "Yeah, we're not doing that. Send in the Guard. We're breaking that." Or what Jill described last hour in North Carolina. All right. Retired special forces to just come in there as private security and take over where the government failed everybody. A human element. All right. In a way, it's we're going to get to this later in the book of Romans, and Paul's going to talk about how sin came from one man, Adam. All right. A second Adam emerged. All right. And salvation came through him. When the human element, because we're the ones with souls. We're the ones that bear the image of the creator of the cosmos. And so for all the problems we bring to the table and the total depravity we joke about and everything else on this show, we are not utterly depraved. We bear some of that image. We reflect some of his greatness. Some of it. We were meant to reflect much more. But even in our sinful state, we reflect still some of it. And if we totally remove the human element, then opportunities for, hey, this longshoreman said, "I'll cripple the American economy." Another human being, Ron DeSantis, comes in and says, "Yeah, F that noise. We're not doing that. So send in the Guard. Let's keep this thing rolling." And then the rest of human beings are like, "Well, now we're sitting out here with our you-know-what's flapping in the wind. Guess we better zip up and get back to work because we look like ass clowns." If everything's automated, does that further the amount of opportunities for us to correct our own errors or limit them? It seems to me, guys, it limits them. Which is why if we had an intact social compact, I think we would be granted the benefit of what is the most precise, efficient way we can do this to do the most good for the most people. We don't have that. So, okay. One American company decides they're going to donate to Eric Trump 2028, J.D. Vance 2028, Ron DeSantis 2028, and the automatons at the docks are like, "Well, you made the wrong decision there, so we're not going to deliver your goods. Just going to push this button. That's not going to happen." You ever notice that many of the decisions made in government are not by the people you actually elect? It's not a republic. They're made by NGOs. That's a political form of automation. And your elected official can just wipe their, let Pontius Pilate this thing, wipe their hands and say, "The NGO made the call here, guys. The NGA made the decision. I don't have any power here." I think right now with where we're at as a society, we are better off with things that are more clumsy, with more flawed people who we can at least know who they are and hold them accountable. And that gives us a chance to confront them, like what you saw DeSantis do with that strike yesterday, and cancel that out. Making everything automatic. Do you guys know the name of the replay official at your game that you watched last weekend? No, you don't. We all remember like Jerry Seaman calling NFL games and Super Bowls growing up. The names of referee Ed Hockley with the biceps. No one knows the name of the damn replay official. So the guy we don't know is the one making all the most important calls. That seems like a recipe for disaster. I actually think we need more human element. I think we need more clumsiness because the social compact is broken. I think we need things more transparently human. So there are more opportunities then in our humanity as well to cancel out someone else's fallen humanity. I cannot cancel out just as easily an NGO. I can vote somebody out. I don't like a candidate. I can vote them out. How do I vote out an NGO? Do you guys know? You guys ever voted for an NGO? You guys ever voted for one of those? You ever had an NGO retention election? I haven't. Have you? No, you haven't. Yet they make almost all of the policies every day. So we have replay officials no one sees making the most important, no one hears from, no one knows the names of, making all the most important calls. We have NGOs no one votes on, no one gets to vote against, no one gets on a ballot, no one ever sees, makes most of the policies. And now we're going to have automation make most of our economic decisions. I think given where we're at, as frustrating as dealing with these unions and corporations and everything else is, you can at least there is still some place of pushback in the marketplace against some of this stuff and the marketplace of ideas. I don't know how the hell you push back against the replay official whose name you don't know. I don't know how the hell you push back against an NGO that you don't get to vote for. And I don't know how the hell you push back against everything's automated. Gentlemen, your thoughts on that?
You know, we talk about, yeah, exactly. We talk about efficiency as if it's this thing that exists in a vacuum apart from any sort of human machinations. As if the it's like what we talk about with the algorithms on social media. It's not just a construct in a vacuum. It was programmed by somebody with biases. When efficiency is the highest virtue beyond human dignity, especially when it comes to impacting human lives, efficiency is not just a numbers on a spreadsheet somewhere. It is a values statement. It is a morality statement. And I'll tell you what happens when efficiency is put above, in terms of priorities, put above human dignity. You get a place like China where they do have a social compact. They have a social compact in China. It's called boot meat ant. That's their social compact over there. Well, government somewhere in Beijing, bureaucrat said, well, it's not efficient for us to let all of these people starve, or it's not efficient for us to have all these mouths to feed. So now, in the name of efficiency, we have a one-child policy. Great. On paper, great sounding idea if you're a soulless bureaucrat totally given over to communism. Until, of course, you have the demographic winter that they're fast approaching over there. So let's not get this idea, especially when it comes to impacting human lives. Efficiency is not just this construct in a vacuum. It is a morality and values statement.
Amen to that.
I do have a cigar at home, and I will smoke it in your honor because you absolutely slayed that, Steve Deace. You gave exactly the answer I gave many years ago, before we had ever even heard of a COVID or anything, or gone down all these rabbit holes about instant replay. And it's why I told you this wasn't really about instant replay. This was about life. Steve, you absolutely nailed it. The economy comes from the Greek economia. I've told you that before. Household. That's what this is fundamentally about. And we've lost track of our fundamentals. And that would still have to be the part in that social compact we're talking about. That would have to be the fundamental that keeps that together. And look what we've done now, Steve. When you mentioned about to keep applying this instant replay thing further, they haven't just twisted it within the game itself about just getting it right, because you were the one, Steve, who went top rope on me on that. Instant replay actually is about more than just so-called getting it right on the field, even though they don't. What did you tell me why the importance of instant replay is really about on many levels? Gambling. You see, that's not even about the game on the field.
Correct.
There's just too much money, guys. Why do you think I do that and do it in that voice? Because it's farcical. The main thing isn't even the main thing. It's not about people at all. Gambling, too, is one of those things. Well, if the social compact is not broken, if it's healthy, if your soul is intact, yeah, throwing a little money out here, that's not going to hurt anybody. But we all know that if it's not intact, gambling ruins lives. Yet look at basically that has become the baseline for all of football. Just too much money, guys. Just too much money, guys. We've totally changed our hermeneutic. It's supposed to be the household, real people. Now it's that. You said I'll like it, Steve. I thank you for putting that into practice. It was perfect. When I envisioned the importance of me saying and being stubborn about that, because it's not really about football, it's about life, you just took that and you dialed it up to 11, and I thank you for it.
Thank you. And, we were just bemoaning the lack of a parallel economy. So let's also thank our friends at Patriot Mobile, because they have been one of the forerunners in building out the parallel economy and at least giving us an option to have it available to us with the one product we all need to utilize nowadays when it comes to technology in order to, thrive in modern society. That's our mobile phones. You don't have to give your money directly to the companies who hate you anymore. You can give it to Patriot Mobile instead. I've seen with my own eyes throughout the course of this year, traveling around the country, I've done multiple events where Patriot Mobile was one of the sponsors of those events. And so when we tell you they take the profits that you give them and reinvest them back into being prophetic in the kingdom, that's just one anecdotal example I've seen with my own eyes, all right? And they have a fantastic, awesome U.S.-based, which means you can understand them, customer service team. So if you want to make the switch today on your mobile phone service, and you do, you can get a free month of service today if you make the switch at patriotmobile.com/Steve. That's patriotmobile.com/Steve. Well, Steve, am I going to sacrifice network coverage service? No. You'll get access to all the major networks out there, and you can switch anytime. You move someplace where one network is more anemic than the other, just let them know. Don't switch your network for free if you're a member of Patriot Mobile. All right, and you get a free month of service to get you started at patriotmobile.com/Steve. Again, that is patriotmobile.com/Steve, or you can call them at 972-PATRIOT. All right, when we come back, more Feedback Friday, and I'm really looking forward to the next 2 to 3 notes that we have lined up. I know we spent a lot of time on that note, but I think it has really broad tentacles in defining what kind of people we want to be here moving forward, provided we get the opportunity to move forward as a people. But we've got more notes we want to touch on. We'll do that here when we come back. Back here on the Steve Deace Show here, folks, and our friends at First Liberty are asking you to join with them and enlist in the fight against the left's attempts to reform the U.S. Supreme Court. I mean, we've got Democratic candidates for Congress are literally running on stacking the courts right now. And it's not for the reasons that I helped to lead the still only successful retention vote against state Supreme Court justices in American history. It's not for the reasons we're concerned about, that they won't stay within their constitutionally mandated assignment and reign of power. It's their concern when they do. They're concerned when the judges look into the Constitution and say, yeah, it doesn't say anything about a right to kill your baby there, so that's gone. Or, yeah, I don't recall the term administrative state anywhere in our founding documents, so we're going to get rid of that too. That's what they're upset about. And that's why First Liberty is asking for our help. And I've known these guys for many years, Kelly Shackelford and that outfit. They do fantastic work and have for years defending our liberties. Our first, second, third, all of them in the courts, and they want that opportunity to be successful to continue. If you agree and want to join with them, you can say no to this Supreme Court coup by the American left and help secure the blessings of liberty and protect the future of our constitutional rights for our children and grandchildren. When you go to supremecoup.com/Steve, COUP for supremecoup.com/Steve. You can learn more there, how you can help to stop the radical left's takeover of the courts at supremecoup.com/Steve. All right, let's continue on here on a Feedback Friday. My boyfriend and I have been dating for 2 years. We know we want to marry each other, so that will happen one day. He comes from a Christian home, was homeschooled the whole way through, and he's very conservative politically and values-wise. I am as well, and came from a similar background growing up. We attend a large church in a Dallas suburb. The pastor is very well known, has a large social media following. One of the many reasons we love our pastor is because he's crystal clear on what Christians' responsibilities are in this day and age. He frequently talks about how the church has refused to step up enough, and as a result, the government has begun to try to fill the God-shaped hole that we all have. He's unashamed to stand in front of thousands of congregates every week and say things like the government doesn't get to define marriage, abortion is the greatest human rights atrocity of our day, and he has a responsibility to be political, even though he is criticized for it because politics is getting more and more spiritual every day. So few pastors these days are willing to be clear on these things, and so I feel so blessed to be in a church that is. But my question relates to my boyfriend's family. He grew up in a very blue state and still has family there. There have been comments made about us being, quote, extreme. And just earlier this week, a family member made a comment about how we have chosen to be a part of an openly, quote, Christian nationalist church that doesn't preach the Bible. This, of course, is not true. He and I are fully aligned, which is what matters most. But any advice on how to deal with this dynamic? I must admit, I can't help but feel extremely resentful and sad. My brother has chosen to dive headfirst into a trans lifestyle, so I've already dealt with some of this in my own family side, or my own side of the family. It's one thing for this insanity to be in the culture, another inside your family. People whose families share their values should thank the Lord for that every single day. Listening to the team discuss the polls and the combinations of the difficult path of getting Trump elected is interesting. Would it be safe to say the easiest thing to accomplish in taking our country back is getting Trump elected? Meaning simpler than what's going on in our actual families is what she meant. And for the sake of her family's privacy, I'm going to withhold her name, by the way. So I'll make that decision. Let me start with back to front. As difficult as it's going to be getting Donald Trump elected in this election, I don't disagree. That might be the simplest task before us. Okay. Because the rot gut, as your note says, Miss Name Withheld, the rot gut is now as permeated into the granular molecular level. It's in the water table of the American family and household now. But let me try to provide some encouragement. Jesus has already prepared for this, already warned us about this. You know, I used to point this out before, and I'll bring it back for now. This negative world thing that we are in. Now, what do I mean by that? A positive world for the church is a world where the church is the chief or one of the chief influential institutions in a culture. And so the default, the baseline assumption of a culture would line up with our value system, even if not everybody in the culture is going to our churches. That's a positive world. A neutral world is a place where we don't have that kind of hegemony or influence, but we still have significant influence. So we are a part of the overall body politic. We're a part of the culture. We're tolerated to trusted, depending on what part of the culture you're in, and either permitted a voice or our counsel is sought for consideration, depending on the part of the culture you're in. I would say what electing Donald Trump would do would be to return us to a neutral world. And I've used that analogy before when talking about Trump representing the New York City of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. That was if you were a spirit-filled believer and lived in New York during that era, that was a neutral world. All right, there might be too many hookers on the streets. Okay, there might have been too many freaks on the streets, but a Bruce Wilkerson could sit there without any fear of retribution and preach at a church not far from Times Square the spirit-filled, no holds barred, no punches pulled gospel. The world we're in now is a negative world. The baseline assumptions are against us. We are given no benefit of the doubt. All of the institutions that are in the country that matter most are aligned against us. That's what I mean by a negative world. Electing Donald Trump, from a cultural standpoint, would maybe at best move us back somewhere between slow down the rate of negativity to moving us back to a neutral world. It would give us a chance, in my view. It's not a panacea, and it doesn't fix many of the problems we have. But it does give us a chance, like within the church. We could go back to, say, 1995. Now that we've been to the future, we hopped into the DeLorean, we've been to the future, and we see what happens when we decide to trade, we decide to get purpose-driven instead of prophetic. When we have boards of directors instead of elders. When we have programs instead of discipleship. When we have McChurch, patterned after Pottery Barn, instead of getting our hands dirty. We've had a chance to see into the future of what will become of us if we embrace these sorts of doctrines and teachings within the church. And so now we can roll the clock back at least a little bit. We're not back to where we need to be, but we've got a chance now to go back and correct some of our errors so that the future we all are now on the brink of maybe doesn't have to happen now. That's essentially what I think electing Trump would do. It would give you a chance to return to an earlier part of the Choose Your Own Adventure book and make the right choices this time so the ending that you've already had a chance to foresee does not occur. And yeah, I think given how pervasive and how much this cancer has metastasized in our culture, this is the simplest task. Because even if we win, as you point out and your note points out, this is now everywhere. And now people feel as if they are safe to say things that to you they would not have been safe to say before. Family members may not have called you for the family kegger. You'd be a killjoy and wouldn't show. But they wouldn't have called you things like a racist or a Christian nationalist either, out in the open. Wouldn't have happened. It's where we are now. Lines are crossed. Maybe your brother hits the red light district in private and keeps that to himself because he knows better, because he's also kind of still ashamed of it. Now he just dives headfirst into, I think I'm a chick. That won't change regardless of the outcome of this election. We have real work to do there. But before we do all this real work, here's what we have to accept. Do not think I came into this world to bring peace, but a sword. Pitting mother against daughter, father against son. Even members of a man's own household will be against him. Embrace that. Marinate in it. Pontificate upon it. Pray over it regularly. It's your existence now. Ignoring that, you will do that at your own peril. Nostalgia says ignore it. It's morning in America again. Vote Trump, put the red hat on, pop in the cruise control, and it's white boy summer. That's what nostalgia says. Tradition says vote to survive. Learn from the decades of mistakes we made getting to this point. Hope we win. And if we do, take full advantage of it and go back to what we did before that worked. Two different things. Nostalgia is a killer. Tradition will empower. Needs to be updated, right? Sometimes, technology changes, cultures evolve, needs to be updated. But it helps you to understand that the framework of your convictions has remained in place and stood the test of time. Maybe your tactics need to evolve and update, but your principles don't. Your convictions don't. But if we do not accept this, that everywhere we go now is a potential confrontation, if we don't learn to accept it, maybe even to at times enjoy it, embrace being the counterculture, get into a place where I am ecstatic that I got to suffer for the name. I am not fit to wear his sandals, so crucify me upside down. Make mine last even longer. Get there. And then this stuff that is going on in our families will still be crushing, but it won't be a surprise, and we'll be ready for it. We're not ready for it. This is the first civilization ever inspired directly by Christianity. And so we are undergoing an evolution into a negative world that is new for us as American or Western Christians. It was the default setting for every previous era of Christendom. Even in Western civilization during given times, if you belong to the wrong sect of Christianity, you might as well just change your name to Ahmed. This is the first time ever in human history that believers of various persuasions were given any form of the benefit of the doubt systemically in a culture. And even we didn't pull it off perfectly. I mean, up until about 60 years ago, if you were a believer with too much melanin in your skin, there were all kinds of places in the culture you were given no benefit of the doubt at all. Now, as the writer of the book of Hebrews says, there's a large cloud of witnesses. They have gone before us. They're cheering us on. Finish the race. They've been where we are. So this is not new to being a believer in this world. As Jesus said, if they're going to do this to a green tree, me, what do you think they're going to do to you? It's just new to us. We've never lived in a post-Christian culture before on this landmass. It's never existed before. It does now. Learn from tradition. Learn from those who came before us. How did they navigate these roads? What did they do? What did they endure? Really learn that. And then really learn this. What did they refuse? What did they refuse? And get used to refusing. Do you guys want to add anything to that before we move on?
Yeah, I think, I've given this analogy before that in the meta sense, and this is the meta analogy that I'm giving, getting Donald Trump elected is like the last chopper out of Nam. It just gives you a chance. Just gives you a chance. Maybe your last chance. But in the here and now perspective, another battle metaphor would be the election of Donald Trump is covering fire on the battlefield. Now, hopefully that covering fire doesn't hit you in the back, but it gives you a chance maybe to regroup and build here and now. Because this thing's going to take a long time to turn around. But it has to begin somewhere. And if you're not even willfully on the battlefield right now, if Donald Trump wins, you have to get back on. I will say that. That's something I will. I've said I don't want to place shackles around anybody's conscience when it comes to Donald Trump, although a few of you are making me tempted to do so. But if he wins, you do have to get back on the battlefield, and I will not apologize for that. You cannot remain, like a lot of you I think are, or a lot of people are. You're not drunk Thor, who just got embarrassed, defeated, getting fat and happy, nihilistic. You cannot continue like that. Because I think you will have a chance, not a big chance, but a chance to turn things around. All it is buying more time, covering fire.
I'll just say very quickly, yesterday during Theology Thursday, we were talking about what is true peace. Steve, in difficult times, just put you on the road to find it right there. Nailed it.
Really quick along the same lines, Stephen writes, he also asks, given what we are facing, is the easiest thing here getting Trump elected? He's like, number one, how do we get Congress to stop spending? We can't handle another 9% inflation rate. Number two, how are we going to actually pull off all of these deportations we need? We've taken in over 4 million people in the last 2 years. Number three, what do we do with what's happening in these places where we're just importing the third world in all these communities? Number four, the mass poisoning of our people that continues with these COVID jabs, although not many are taking them anymore, but they need to be pulled from the market, people held accountable. Number five, reforming, gutting, shutting down all these three-letter agencies. And he's like, honestly, man, as hard as it is to get Trump elected, is that the easiest thing we have to do on the list? Yes. Yeah. That's the second email this week that touched on that exact same theme. Yes. This is why we cannot, if we win this. All right, man, back to the lazy boy. Turn it on, Fox. Let's own the libs. No.
That's actually a more, it's not reasonable either way. It's a more reasonable answer if we lose. Because then you do become like Thor. I don't know. Maybe it's going to hell. I got it. Honestly, you're absolutely right, Steve. If we win, there is work to do.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. And if we lose, we're all going to turn on each other and blame everybody else for why we lost, Trump included. And that'll be 2 years of suck, which is another reason why we have to win. All right, because, you know, while we're turning on each other and doing the Spider-Man finger-pointing gif, you think they're going to pause and wait for us to get done over there? No. Boots are going to throats. Romans 8:28.